I'm from Crumlin in Dublin. My dad was a stone carver. We had a large family. There were 14 kids. A 2-bedroom corporation house, so it wasn't luxurious. You walk out into a football stadium and it's yours. It's a very strange feeling for someone like me who comes from an ordinary working class background.
I think anyone who wouldn't like that feeling must be a little bit soul dead.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Here Ken Leisure with a pass so true to ball the stone and Clark's in view.
When you win, the buzz is probably one of the greatest buzzes you can ever get. When you lose, it's not like going down. It's the lowest point. Start of the even, 10 to 5. You haven't won. It's sick time.
The buzz is back. We're all excited. Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, a podcast focusing on the trials and tribulations of Carlisle United Football Club. From Chris Billy to Des Byrne and Paul Simpson to Brian Shelley, we've got it covered. This is episode 5 and it's our first match preview episode of the season. For this episode, I'm joined for the first time in our regular episodes by Mike Booth. Mike, football is finally back this weekend. First game since our last pre-season fixture against Liverpool under 23s. Oldham in the Cup. Are you excited?
Yeah, you know, it's been months, hasn't it? So it's great to be finally back underway. Obviously, we haven't had a competitive fixture at all in that time. There wasn't one
definitely
week,
hasn't been any. No.
So yeah, it's great to be underway. It'd be good to finally sort of see where we're at, really, because pre-season fixtures, they're not always the best barometer. So it'd be nice, competitive game to see where we're really at.
I think especially this season as well, it's very different, isn't it? And we'll discuss it a bit more later, but teams are coming back at totally different times, in totally different sort of states of their squad and things like that. So it's really, really hard to judge. I mean, we not comfortably, but we beat Wigan in a friendly game. But then obviously other games we've lost. So, you know, it shows that it's not quite as balanced as it normally is in pre-season, I guess.
No, and I think as well, I mean, we're no exception to this. A few teams, the lack of sort of match fitness and that is really showing. I mean, we've had a few injuries, and I think players physically, we're not the only club who's in this situation. And I think it is going to take a little while before physically teams are sort of able to handle the hustle and bustle of a season. But we've got quite a bit of Saturday, Tuesday. So it's going to be a long slog. Yeah, definitely.
We will, of course, be discussing the Oldham game shortly. But I think first up, we've got to start with a little bit of sad news, unfortunately. And that is, of course, the passing of former United owner John Courtenay at the age of 70.
I was having a pint with my next door neighbour, and Roddy came in with Caroline, and we got chatting. He was saying the potential was brilliant.
He said, "That's for sale, isn't it?" That's exactly how he said, "That's for sale." And he just went into a little mind of his own, and he just took 2 pulls on a cigarette while we were still in a conversation. He says, "I'll buy that."
John will always be known as the man who saved the club from the never-ending spiral was heading into at the end of the Knighton era, where there was a real possibility that the club might actually even go out of business. He was convinced to buy the club by his old friend and then United manager Roddy Collins after bumping into him back home in Dublin for a pint. I once described that as the most expensive pint he ever bought. There was a stage towards the end of the 01-02 season where it looked like actually the takeover was collapsing and it wasn't going to happen. And obviously Roddy was sacked at that point for speaking out against Knighton, and Billy Bower was put in temporary charge. But eventually, John basically, the only way you can put it, he basically just forced Knighton out by giving him what he wanted and was able to wrestle the control of the club and reappoint Collins as manager. His 2 years in charge weren't the most successful, and in fact obviously ended in relegation to the conference as it was then. But I don't think anyone could doubt his heart was in the right place, and arguably it overruled his head at times. It should be remembered the challenges he faced, inheriting a much bigger debt than he first thought, and the club still being in administration. And actually, we are still the only club that has gone through administration and paid 100% of the creditor debts. And I think that's something that Courtenay does deserve a lot of credit for. The foundations he put in place in that final season helped towards the quick return from non-league and then subsequently winning the League Two title the season after. Most fans remember him as a larger-than-life character, with a way with words that would make Malcolm Tugger blush, but he always had time for fans and would buy everyone a pint at away games. A decent bloke who deserved a bit more luck as owner of the club. Yep, really sad news really, Mike, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's tragic. He was certainly the definition of a larger-than-life character. And in my opinion, there wouldn't be a Carlisle United if it wasn't for him. He really did save the club, like you're saying. He did put us on a solid foundation for Fred Story to come in and sort of run the club more like a business, if you like. Courtenay, he did sort of throw money sort of willy-nilly about, which isn't always a bad thing as a fan. But some of the signings were questionable during that time, and I think his loyalty to Roddy Collins was a bit stronger than maybe it should have been.
Yeah, it's interesting. The last few days I've been watching back some of the Rod Squad episodes, and he was clearly a man with ambition and clearly a man who wanted the club to do well, and you could see his heart was completely in the right place. But as you say, he just had a little bit too much loyalty at the start maybe to Roddy, but it got to a point where even he realised that enough was enough and something had to change in that final season. It's weird because you forget he was only an owner for 2 seasons. It feels like it was a bit longer, but looking back, it was just those 2 seasons that he was in charge. It was interesting actually watching him as well. There's clips on the Rod Squad where he's looking through the message board. You look at some of the people he's talking to and you think, some of them are still posting there now. Some of them were having a bit of a go at him. And there's a great clip of him. I think it's from, it's on the On The Ball TV series. There was on ITV years ago. It was a little feature on us in the season. We did go down when we were we started to pick up some results.
And he said we were the safest bet in the country.
He did. It wasn't far off, we almost did it. But there's a great clip in there where basically a fan has a go at me, and some owners will just sit there and take it. I used to see Michael Knight down the years sit there and take a lot of abuse. He stood up and gave it back, both barrels to the lad. It was quite incredible to watch. Yeah. But yeah, really sort of sad news. It's kind of one of those ones you think if he'd maybe had a Simpson in charge a little bit sooner, things maybe would have been different. But then it might not. It might have been different in those circumstances. You never know.
But it's worth noting as well that the money he put in, we've had other owners, sort of Fred Story, Andrew Jenkins, and the money they've put in has sort of been loans from their businesses or what have you. But the money that Courtenay put in, that was just, there you go.
He pretty much took nothing, didn't he, when he sold the club? He pretty much let go for nothing. We could get into a debate about the old land issue and certain organisations. Well, let's just leave it there, shall we? But yeah, I met him a few times at games and genuinely found him a really good bloke to sit and talk with. Yeah, he had his very strong opinions on the game and stuff like that. But he, you know what? It was just a good time. It sounds weird because we struggled in those 2 seasons, but it was genuinely enjoyable time to go to games. There was a bit of excitement there, a little bit of a buzz, even if we were struggling. Whereas now, the last few years, you could argue there's been nothing there really, has there? We've discussed it before that the buzz is almost sort of gone at times. So it's
Yeah, well, I think was there a game against Darlington where we got a massive gate under?
Yeah, well, that's one of the ones actually that was on the ball thing. I think it was 12,000, possibly maybe 8,000, 9,000. But obviously, the opening day we got 12,000 against Hartlepool just after he took over, and people are laughing. Oh no,
we couldn't get that now.
13,000 people pledged to go back if Knighton was gone. 12,500 turned up for that first game against Hartlepool. Within a couple of games, it dropped back to 4,500, 5,000. I think Courtenay always felt a little bit let down by that, but that's the risk of believing what you read in a petition, isn't it, really? You just can't take that seriously at times. But yeah, really sad news. Despite the fact that his 2-season charge weren't successful, I think he'll still be very fondly remembered by all Carlisle fans. So all we have to do is sign off there and say, go well, JC.
Yeah, definitely.
I just start by, people got to know me from being in the beehive and that, and a few babies. I love when I sing song. Can I just start them out with Stand Up for the Comrades? Stand up for the Comrades.
it's like everything else in life. What you put in is what you get out. You can't put in 10 worth and expect to get a pound's worth out. If you put enough emotion into it and you're wrapped up in it enough, the rewards are much higher. The pain is much deeper, but the rewards are higher. It's weird to sit here now and know that we've eventually achieved what we started to do in January. The days the first are the good days. We'll be okay.
It seems I'm too fat and old to play now. I mean, I can't think of anything better than to own your own club.
Okay, Mike, let's get stuck into the main part of the show now. First up, we have a general roundup of some of the news that's happened over the last few weeks or so. So let's get started first with signings. So since the last episode, we've had 2 more new signings. They never stop, really, do they? It's up to 13 now.
No, but neither of them were Jamie Devitt, but, you know.
No. Let's. I was going to say, could we get through an episode without mentioning Jamie Devitt? Probably not right now, and probably right to mention it because it is what seems to be heating up, or it needs to be resolved sooner or later. But anyway, let's move on to the ones who have signed. So first up is a familiar face, and again, not the familiar face of Jamie Devitt. It's goalkeeper Marcus Dewhurst. He's arrived on a half-season loan from Sheffield United to cover the long-term injury to Magnus Norman, the new signing. Doesn't seem to be much of an update in terms of what Norman's injury is just yet, but it's interesting because we thought Dewhurst would just come back automatically anyway, didn't we, really? There was a feeling the reason he's being brought on loan is to get him ready to come back next season. But obviously, it's happened in the end, but just not in the way we expected.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because obviously we had 3 keepers in the running last season, which is a bit weird. And you know, I don't even think Dewhurst was on the bench, was he?
I think he made the bench twice. I think towards the end, maybe 2 or 3 times because Louis Gray went out to Chester at the end of February, I think. So maybe a couple of games he was on the bench for, possibly.
But I think Beach said that Dewhurst would have.
Yeah, he did. He would have made his debut. Yeah.
Yeah. If you know, obviously the world didn't go down the fan, but So obviously, you know, they've had a good look at him last season. They know what he's about. It's not sort of a panic signing as you sometimes get if a keeper gets an injury. So
so just a little update on what he's done in his career. He's previously had loan spells at Gainsborough Trinity and Guiseley. I think he's very well thought of at Guiseley, actually. I think I was watching on YouTube a few clips of some of his saves he makes, and he's clearly a talented lad, and he's played for the England youth side, so he's an England under-19 international currently. And actually, here's something that some fans might not know. He's actually scored a goal for the England youth sides, a late equaliser in the 85th minute. Now that sounds a bit weird, but I understand that at the level he was playing at, the matches were only 40 minutes in each half. So 80 plus 5 was injury time. But yeah, he scored an injury time equaliser for an England youth side against Spain of all teams. So yeah, he's got a bit of ability in both boxes by possibly there. So you never know, we might get to see that at some point. Probably not. The next signing. One that I think we've expected for a couple of weeks since he came in on trial is Dean Furman, South African international with 54 caps. He's also captained his country. He spent the last 5 seasons at SuperSport United in the South African Premier Division, winning the Nedbank Cup twice and the MTN8 Cup once. I have no idea what those competitions are and what format they have. I'm sure we'll probably have, based on the Cal United Facebook page, we're probably going to have an influx of South African listeners to the show now, who will no doubt be emailing me to correct me on my terminology with South African football. But and
for disrespecting the what Jim McCall Cup.
Yeah, and obviously telling me what Dean Furman's nickname is in over in South Africa. I can't remember what it was now. It was some weird word, wasn't it? But anyway. So yeah, obviously he's previously at Rangers, Bradford, Oldham and Doncaster. Nice experienced head to short midfielder. A bit of a rarity here. He's a Jewish footballer. There's not many of them about. I think it's Joe Jacobson, I think, at Wycombe Wanderers is the only one I can think of in the English leagues. It's an interesting one, that. But yeah, I think once he gets himself fit, he could be a really good signing for us.
Yeah, I think so. You know, he's an experienced head. Obviously, we kind of lost that in midfield when Mike Jones went, and I think there's a good case to say that Furman's an upgrade on Mike Jones. No disrespect.
Oh, no, definitely
not. To Mike Jones whatsoever, but you know, I think he's got God knows how many caps for South Africa as well, playing against, you know, top players. So yeah, he should be a really good sign, and obviously we do have a young squad, so it's nice to have a sort of old, experienced head for them to sort of.
I said 54 caps for. It's actually 56. I just double checked, and I knew I kept mixing the two up when I was doing the planning for this episode, and still managed to get it wrong.
Although actually, what's the deal with the African Cup of Nations? Will we?
It's a good question. Actually, we'll have to have a look and see whether it because they did shift it to the summer, didn't they? Or they were going to shift it to the summer, I'm sure. But I don't know if that actually happened. But that's an interesting point, though. We might well end up. I don't know if he's even been called up that much lately. I know he got 4 or 5 caps last year, I think. So you never know with that one. It'll be interesting to see whether they think he's playing at a good enough level to be representing South Africa now. It'd be good if he could get another player with a few caps under his belt. But yeah, so Dean Furman signed up. So we're in a not too bad a position, really, are we? I think the squad's looking pretty settled now. I know we keep saying this, but just lacking that attacking midfielder, really, aren't we? That's the only place we need to fill, and we will keep banging the Devitt drum, but that one needs to be resolved at some point in the near future, really, doesn't it? Otherwise, we're just going to have this situation where it's going to drag on, and the start of the season's going to come, and we're going to play well in games, but we're just not going to be able to unlock the door, will we, the defences? So.
Yeah, and sort of like I sort of mentioned before, with sort of injuries, it seems like, the past couple of games, it's basically just been kids on the bench. And, I don't know if they're ready or not, but it is going to be a long slog this season, and we just do need maybe that 1 or 2 more players just to pad the squad out a little bit.
As we're going to move on to the next point now, obviously, if they're going to be looking to get some of the young players out on loan. Speaking of which, first-year pros Charlie Barnes and Liam Lightfoot, who are right back and defensive midfielder respectively, have both gone out on half-season loans to Kendal Town. I mean, it's a pretty decent move for both of them. I think sometimes people sort of mock it a little bit when we send players out on loan to clubs like this, but it usually comes round about November, December, January, and you start to think to yourself, if they're going out on loan there now, they're probably not going to make it. But getting them out on a half-season loan now gets them regular football, keeps them in good shape.
And it's men's football as well, which isn't something they're overly used to.
Yeah, they're going there to be a general part of the squad rather than going there maybe to fill a space brought by an injury to one of their normal players at Kendal or whatever. But yeah, I think it's good that they've sorted that out nice and early so they can get that half season in and get some regular games. They can still play in reserve games as well and friendlies, so and they will train on a day-to-day basis with the club. So yeah, I'm a bit sort of sceptical when we send players out on loan to clubs like that, sort of halfway or towards the end of the season. For instance, Kieran Kerr last season when he went on loan, there was a thought he's not going to make it, is he? Clearly, they're just getting him out there so he can get himself sorted. This is getting them football so they can get themselves ready, hopefully, to push for a first team place.
But at the same time, it maybe speaks highly of the lads who haven't been loaned out. Beach obviously wants them to be in and around the club. He's not afraid to loan young lads out. He's done that, but these lads who are still here maybe have something to offer.
Well, obviously, you've got to remember the fact that he has to have one player who's been in our academy in the squad. Now, I don't know if Gavin Riley counts towards that, because obviously he was in our academy up till the age of 16. I
think Danny Granger counted as that via that rule.
We had a debate about this, whether he did or not, and I can't remember if it was confirmed if he did. If Gavin Riley does, then to be honest, I'd be a little bit disappointed because it's a little bit cheating, really, isn't it? You want players who have come through now to be in there, not players who came and sort of went before they even made it to YCS level. But it does seem like Taylor Charters is the choice for that position at the moment. You'd imagine Josh Dixon will be in contention once he gets himself fit towards the end of this month, hopefully. So yeah, good moves for those two. Another little bit of young player news is obviously Lewis Bell, who signed a 2-year pro deal with a 1-year option for the club to extend. That doesn't start though till next summer, so effectively it's a 3-year deal he's been given almost. If the club at any point think this lad's good and we want to protect our asset here, they'll just extend it by that extra year. It's a very similar deal to what Jared Branthwaite had, actually, which does suggest that the club really do think quite highly of him.
Yeah, definitely. And, because normally, obviously, these sort of second-year scholars deals are done at the end of the season. And obviously, they're doing it now, so they obviously think very highly of him.
Well, they've done a few of those in the last few years, haven't they, really?
Yeah.
Of the McCarran and Branthwaite are 2 examples, and they tried to do Galloway, but he obviously decided he wanted to go elsewhere.
But obviously, McCarran, Branthwaite and Galloway all left for decent fees by all accounts. So,
Yeah.
Hopefully, Bell is showing the promise that they've showed.
Yeah, I mean, the academy is clearly in pretty decent shape at the moment, isn't it, when you look at it? Because ever since Kinder's come back, and I know there was a little bit before that as well with Darren Edmondson, to be fair, got to give him credit for that. It does seem like we're getting players pushing towards the first team, or at the very least making us a bit of money as well. So,
and I think as well, Beach has showed a willingness to sort of willingness to give these lads a go as well, which is good.
Yeah, I think both him and Presley actually. I know some people don't like to give him credit. I think both of them do deserve credit for the fact that they've looked at these young lads and said, "Yeah, let's give him a chance in the team." And even actually, you can even argue Sheridan as well. He put McCarran into the first team, so last few managers have certainly given those young lads a chance. The one before, maybe not so much. I think most people would say. I think we all saw that article with Connor Hamill, who used to be part of our youth setup, and he wasn't overly complimentary about the way Curl treated the young prospects at the club, was he really? It was an interesting read. I know people argue, well, he gave Dempsey a chance, but Dempsey was already in the team. That was just an obvious one. There was no doubt about that one. But yeah, an interesting one. But yeah, good news to see Lewis getting a deal. I'd imagine if he's already been given a 2-year deal, we'll probably start to see him if he keeps progressing, pushing for a first team place point this season.
We don't have a ton of depth on the wings either.
No, it's true.
So he probably will get his chance at some point.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. I mean, similar to what happened with Branthwaite, really, isn't it? And McCarran, I suppose, as well. So yeah, good news to see that. Okay, that sort of transfer squaddy sort of news out of the way. Let's move on to the fans at games and season tickets situation. So let's discuss that a little bit now. So we're going to be a quick update here. So sales, last update we got from the club, from Nigel Clibbins, suggests sales are about 1,700, I think, was the number we saw. It sounds like the club expected it to be down a little bit because some fans have contacted them saying, look, we're concerned, we don't feel comfortable going to games at the moment in the current situation, which is totally understandable because I think we've said this before, we do have a bit of an ageing fan base and there'll be people there who are in the vulnerable category think to themselves, I don't really want to be going out and risking it. And obviously the fact that the club said you've got to wear masks, there'll be people who will be against that and probably won't want to go as well. So not really surprised, but I think actually 1,700 is a pretty decent Turtles fan. There'll be people who can't afford to buy season tickets, and there's probably be spaces now for them to buy tickets in advance for games. So, it's not too bad. Sounds like a lot of the seating areas are now filling up. The main stand sounds like it's pretty much done. There's still space in the paddocks at both ends. The centre bits are getting a bit full now as well. And in the Warwick Road end, there seems to be a lot of space. There's going to be no away fans, so we imagine the block in the east stand will be used for home fans potentially. And obviously there's the option for the waterworks if the club feels like we need it to get fans into games. But interesting further development there, obviously, is the fact that the EFL announced, I think it was yesterday, that obviously, which is Thursday, obviously don't know when we're recording it, that our game at Cambridge on the opening day of the league season next week will be a test event, which will allow home fans to attend the game. So obviously, as I mentioned there, home fans only. Capacity will be capped at 2,500, which by my estimate is about 30% of their 8,200 capacity Abbey Stadium. Big positive step, I suppose, Mike, isn't it, really? We've sort of been waiting for something like this to be announced. Interesting that it's one of our games. It's one of the ones our game is the one that's been picked.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't expecting something so soon, which is really good. Obviously, if 30% is where they want to go, we're probably in a better position than most teams, and that we could be getting gates potentially double what other teams are able to get.
I think it's 5,400 is the 30% of our capacity, which is below our average attendance the last few seasons. So, in theory, we should comfortably get fans in, especially as well when you consider that would normally include away fans as well. And obviously they won't be including that until we're back to full capacity, which we've been told.
But we might even sort of sell more tickets in the fact that capacity is reduced and people think that, I've got to get a ticket because it might sell out, with it only been 5,000 of the capacity potentially. But there was something floated around, and I haven't seen anything concrete on it about, obviously it's home fans only, but there's something I heard about 100-mile rule. You can't travel more than 100 miles to go to the football.
I would be incredibly annoyed if that is a rule because I've done the old Google Maps radius thing, and my house is, I think, 102 miles away from Brunton Park. So, suffice to say, I heard that's absolute nonsense. I bought a season ticket, and no one said I can't have it, so I will be going to the games. That's one I think that was maybe mooted in the past, but I think it was sort of, I think people realised that actually fans don't necessarily live near their home grounds. So I think as long as you, I mean, at the end of the day, I could go up and visit relatives in Cumbria. What's to stop me? I can go and sit in a pub in Cumbria with relatives or friends. How's that different from going to the football? And as long as they follow the social distancing rules, it's not really any different, is it?
Exactly.
I mean, there's going to be fans going into the pubs before games and gathering together. So, it's mad, isn't it?
And it seems weird that we're well within 100 miles of Tranmere, say.
Yeah.
So we could go there and watch a team that we don't support. Or, I don't know. But, like I say, I haven't seen anything concrete on it, so hopefully it's all a load of rubbish.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's absolute nonsense. It was interesting to read Clubbo's comments, wasn't it, about fans being back at games. He seemed to be hinting that they were aiming for the Barrow game potentially, but actually it could be even better than that. No, we've only got one game before that against Southend, so that's suggesting potentially we could be allowed back in for the first game of the season and get fans to every home game this season. Will be an interesting development.
Which again, not all teams will potentially get that. So
no, that's very true. So we'll be quite lucky if we do get that. Hopefully we'll have a further update on that one soon, maybe early next week, we hope. It'll be interesting because if they do say after our game at Cambridge, yes, home fans are allowed now, well, the club have then only got a week to get season tickets sorted. It's either, and I'd imagine they don't really want people collecting them, because if you've got to go and collect your season ticket, then there's going to be queues on the day, isn't there? And you don't really want people queuing anymore. So I do wonder if maybe that Southend game will come just a little bit too soon. And maybe the Barrow game's a more sensible target, or potentially a cup game, obviously, and we'll get on to talking about the Carabao Cup shortly. But yeah, it's encouraging news. Hopefully fans back at the games soon, but we'll just have to wait and see for now, won't we? Okay, I think that's rounded up all the news sort of stuff for now. So let's move on to doing the match preview. We're going to obviously look ahead to this weekend's game against Oldham Athletic in the Carabao Cup.
You're a hero here because you got rid of Michael Knighton. It's a fact.
Yeah, but a pat in the back is 6 inches away from a kick in the rear end, so you can't take that too serious.
Okay, Mike, as we keep saying, first competitive game of the season this weekend against Oldham Athletic in the Carabao Cup. I suppose me and Dan discussed this on the show in previous episodes. Of all the sort of draws we could have had in this round, bear in mind fans can't attend, so home advantage probably isn't as big as it normally is. It's probably as good a game as we could have hoped for in this round, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Oldham are still in a bit of a mess off the field. They haven't really made any remarkable signings this summer. I mean, they signed that Cameron Borthwick-Jackson from Manchester United. He had a few first team games a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it was one of those ones where they were just throwing players in the team at the time. I'm not sure he was necessarily quite the standard, but that's what Man United do, isn't it? They just give lads a chance, I suppose, at times.
Yeah, and they've signed a few non-league players as well.
And the one that stands out for me is Conor McElhenney from
Everton.
Fleetwood. I think he was at Everton, wasn't he? He was at Fleetwood. He's always looked pretty decent when he's played against us in the millions of games we've played against them in various competitions, some of which don't exist. But yeah, so yeah, I sort of agree with you that off the field they're a little bit of a mess. So obviously last season they finished 19th, which was one place behind us in the table. Dino Marmaria was the manager last season. As much as we like to mock him at times, he actually did an all right job sort of stabilising them, I think, because they were in a bit of a state when he came in, and they did okay from what I remember. But he was sacked as manager just before the start of pre-season in some bizarre reason, possibly a little harsh. Replaced by Harry Kewell. His managerial record is a little bit patchy, to say the least. He was Watford under 23 coach, I think, for quite a long while. And then he got the job at Crawley. Seemed to do okay there, but then did the dirty on them to go to Notts County. and that was, to say the least, a bit of a disaster, wasn't it?
But in fairness, I mean, a lot of managers have been a disaster at Notts County, so it's not a lot to go by. But
you wonder if it's not the managers that are the disaster, but maybe the club there.
Yeah.
By the sound of things, they're in a bit of a better state now. But yeah, so an interesting appointment. He's one of those ones that, as a player, you never probably would have had him down as being a manager, would you? Really?
No, not really. No, he wasn't sort of the typical leader, and sort of. That you would expect to go into management, but he's kind of in a situation now where he needs to prove himself because, like you say, his record is flaky. He needs to get a club that he can put on his CV and say, "Look what I did here," kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Yeah.
Well, their pre-season actually is a bit. We talk about them being a bit of a mess, but actually, I was looking at their results. They're not done too bad actually. So they started out pre-season with a 3-3 draw against Accrington. They got a 3-2 win against Curzon Aston, which is a local non-league side in Manchester, I believe. Then they got a really impressive 2-0 win over Forest, and it was quite a strong Forest team. They obviously, as well, arguably probably should be in better shape than Oldham because their season actually didn't finish that long ago, did it? Although it ended pretty badly from what I remember. They managed to blow a playoff place on the last day. So yeah, that was a decent result for them. They then had a 1-0 loss at Rochdale, but then a 2-1 win over Lincoln. So they've generally been playing teams from the higher divisions, and the only one that's beat them is Rochdale. So, as we mentioned though at the start, how much can you actually read into this? Because quite often these games are played at training grounds, so there's a different sort of tempo to them. Like I said, teams are in different states of fitness and in terms of how they've returned and in terms of how they put their squads together. So it's a hard one to judge, but based solely on results, they may be doing a bit better than they probably would have expected.
Yeah, I think so. And like you say, you can't always judge a lot from pre-season, obviously. But yeah, it'd be really interesting, and it'd be good for us to sort of set a marker over a team that was, like you say, they finished one place below us last season. If we can set a marker over them to sort of say, no, we're better than last season, then it should be sort of set us up well going into the rest of the month.
Yeah, you should hope so, really. It's one of those games you look at, despite what I said there about them on good preseason, we should be looking to win it, really, realistically. And as you mentioned, they've always had issues off the field in the last few years, and I'm sure there's a couple of times last season where their players weren't paid at the end of the month, so you wonder as well, with no fans going to games, how long is that going to last? And I'm sure I read somewhere as well that I think they've been locked out of the, that brand new stand that they've built that's sort of to the left of the away end as you look at it. I'm sure they're locked out of that at the moment because they haven't been paying the rent or something, but it's a bit of a basket case club, really, aren't they, at times?
But as well, without wanting to jinx things, I think they have a terrible record in the League Cup first round. I'm glad you've
teed that one up nicely there, mate, because I've got the stats here. Their record in the League Cup is pretty appalling, to say the least. So, I mean, let's just look at last season for a start. So they were knocked out in the first round of the League Cup last year by Blackburn Rovers. They were winning that game going into the 90th minute 2-1, and they managed to lose 3-2 in normal time. Didn't go to extra time. 2 goals in injury time, and they were knocked out. The same night we were obviously beating Barnsley 3-0 in arguably the best performance under Stephen Presley, and it's kind of weird when you look back at that and everyone was a bit optimistic after the game, and it all came a bit crashing down, really, didn't it? It was a bit sad, but even going back over the 10 years before last season, they've only made it past the first round on one occasion when they beat Wigan 2-1 in the 2016-17 season. Other than that, they've been beaten in the first round in every season, bar that one, which is quite incredible. Now, that contrasts that to our record in the League Cup. In the same period, we've only failed to make it past the first round on 3 occasions, which were in 10-11, 14-15, where, let's be fair, we were a bit of a mess of a club that season, and the 18-19 season as well. In that time, we've actually made it to the third round on 3 occasions as well. So we've got sort of the form, if you want to put that way, in the League Cup. But can you really judge it on that? And especially in the current circumstances, I don't think you can. But it's just interesting to look at just how bad they are in the League Cup and how good we are. It's one of those things, we never used to be particularly great in cup competitions, but roundabout when Greg Abbott took over as manager, wasn't it? We suddenly started to take cups a little bit more seriously because we saw it as a good way of making money for the club. And since then, we generally have done well in the League Cup and in the FA Cup as well.
Yeah, and for all his flaws, Keith Curle pulled off some incredible cup results.
Oh yeah, he was a really good cup manager for us. To be fair, you know, he got some great results in those games. He knew how to set us up against teams from higher divisions when we needed to. So yeah, okay, let's look at the team news. So Callum Guy returns after missing a game that didn't actually happen. He apparently was suspended for a match. I'm not sure what game that was. No. But even so, actually, he's back from injury, isn't he? Because he was injured at the end of last season, obviously, in that game against... I think was that game against Newport, was it? I can't remember. Was it Forest Green? One of the two. Remember. But he picked up a particularly bad injury. Was that long ago now? It's mad. So you'd imagine Dean Furman might be pushing for a start in this game, wouldn't you, really? He came on as a sub, apparently, in a game that didn't happen. I think we should probably just say the Fleetwood game, shouldn't we? And just not really mention the competition. Be a bit easier. Yeah. But yeah, you'd imagine Dean Furman will be pushing for his first start against his old club. Other than that, you're obviously looking at Omari Patrick and Joshua Coyote probably coming a little bit too soon for those two, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Touré's red card was lifted as well from that game. So he's available. I think Dickinson's still injured, isn't he?
Dickinson's still injured. We haven't had an update on it, but it doesn't exactly sound promising, does it? Because the suggestions seem to be similar to Magnus Norman. It's a medium to long term, depending on how it's assessed. So it doesn't look likely that he'll be involved. And you wonder whether that's where Beach might look at the loan market to bring in reinforcements, because we could probably do with another wide player maybe to fill in there. Cause
we haven't really tapped into the loan market either.
No, other than Dewhurst, obviously, to cover for Norman, and obviously Coyote, but we expected that one anyway, didn't we? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether he does dip into the market at some point in the next week or so. It doesn't look like he's going to have anyone in time to feature on the weekend, unless he's doing a Keith Curle and keeping it quiet, a la Matt Young and who was it? What was his name? That
the lad from Rochdale, was it?
Oh no, it wasn't the lad from Rochdale. It was the lad from West Ham goalkeeper Raphael Spiegel, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
God, there was a signing if you ever saw one. Brought in his cover with Dan Hanford left on the bench, and after 2 games they brought Dan Hanford back in, which says a lot, really. So Jack Armour again is unlikely to feature, and Josh Dixon is still working his way back to fitness after his long-term injury. I think the team, probably the back 5 at least, picks itself, doesn't it? You know that it's going to be Farman in net. We've seen how good his kicking is from the games he's played so far. Your back 4 will probably be Tanner, Hayden, McDonald and Anderton. I think that's just picking itself at the moment. Sounds like Callum Guy is pretty much a shoo-in to playing games at the moment as well. He's done really well in pre-season. Possibly Furman as well, maybe. We'll start.
Yeah, Devine maybe.
Possibly Devine, although he was hooked at half-time in the last game, wasn't he? So you never know. Maybe Mellish obviously is pushing for place, but is he really doing enough to hold down a starting place? I'm not 100% convinced yet. In the attacking positions, Coyote's obviously going to start if he's fit. Doesn't look likely though.
Riley.
I think Riley, Touré and Alessandro are going to be the front 3 again, just simply because they're the only ones available, and the injuries are just stacking up a little bit at the moment, which is a shame.
It's not a bad front 3 though.
No, it's not. It's certainly not. But I am quite excited to see what it's going to be like when Patrick, Coyote and Touré are all fit, because that is a powerful, strong and
fast,
creative front line. You know, they cause problems. They can take players on. I genuinely think it'll be exciting to see how they fit in. Interesting, you mentioned Gavin Riley there. I understand the other night he started out in a wide position. I am really worried that's what's going to happen with him this season. I have this horrible feeling that we're going to end up wasting his talent, so to speak. He's not a wide player. He can probably play there and do an okay job, but he's one of those players when you look at him, play him down the middle, and you do need, bring his name up again, you need a Devitt-style player, someone who's going to play the through ball for him to run onto and take on plays, even if you knock it over the top maybe, and get him to chase, because he's got pace and he can finish. You don't want him playing out wide. He's going to be solid there, but he's not going to really do much for you. And that is my big worry, that this seems to happen with players with us. We sign these players who are good in one position, but end up just sort of shoehorning them in somewhere else.
But like I said earlier, we don't have a ton of depth out wide. If Riley isn't to play out wide, sort of who's fit that can really,
True, it's true.
So, maybe when players are fitter, he might get a few games more central.
Yeah. Obviously, we didn't mention Joe Riley there as well, who by all accounts did okay in that game the other day.
That's going to melt poor James Phillips, Joe Riley and Gavin Riley, I think.
And Thurman and Farman as well. Yeah. That's going to blow his mind, isn't it? But yeah, I don't think there's many options really for Beach at the moment. I think the team will pick itself, bar maybe one or two players. Maybe Mellish and Devine are the two that are probably potentially going to be unlucky if Thurman and Guy come into the team, possibly, because it sounds like Riley did well and he'll probably start again maybe. So it'll be interesting to see how
There's no shadow of a doubt that this is Beach's team now. I think Mellish is the only player that isn't his signing, apart from obviously
Hayden.
And Hayden,
Aaron Hayden as well.
But obviously he's extended the deals for these lads as well. So
yes,
it's absolutely his team, and it's his chance to sort of really prove himself.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's have a quick look at the Oldham team. As I mentioned before, they've been quite busy in the transfer market over the last week or so, haven't they? Which, for me, has a little bit shades of us last summer, where we were sort of holding on, waiting, and we finally made a scurry of signings with about 1 or 2 weeks to go, didn't we? And the result was that the squad just didn't really knit for quite a while, did it? Really, it was a tough one, and it seems very similar with them. They signed midfielder Ben Garrity, who was previously at Warrington Town. They signed him on a season-long loan from Blackpool, alongside Jordan Barnett from Barnsley. A bit confusing there for you. He signed on a half-season contract. I think he was released by Barnsley actually at the end of last season. And Callum Whelan on a 2-year deal after he was released from Watford. The other one that stands out for me, you've obviously mentioned Cameron Borthwick-Jackson from Manchester United, is they've signed Bobby Grant on loan from Wrexham. Now, he's a decent player. He's always done well at this level, but signing players on loan from National League sides doesn't really fill you with confidence, does it, for a new season?
No, not really. And, even you could argue signing players from teams that are in your league as well, it's not sort of the most inspiring thing, shall we say, but I suppose these are unprecedented times and teams want to get players off the wage bill and this and that and the other. But yeah, like we sort of said earlier, they don't really have any real inspiring signings, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean the one that obviously stood out to us, we mentioned there, Conor McElhenney, decent enough forward, he's a good target man, he'll do a decent job.
But his record isn't brilliant though.
It's not, but he maybe goals wise he's not going to get as many, but he might be a decent link player, I think, for every player up with him. Speaking of playing up there, obviously they've got Danny Rowe that they signed from AFC Fylde earlier this year. It's an interesting one. I've picked him out as their danger man, but I'll be honest with you, I've seen him play 2 or 3 times. I went to see AFC Fylde against FC United a few years ago, and I was not impressed with him at all. As an actual footballer, he's not particularly great. He has good little spells, and look, his record speaks for itself. He scores goals. He scored 3 in 10 after he signed for Oldham, but he doesn't. He looks a bit more like an old-fashioned League 2 player rather than your modern League 2 players. They look in good shape, don't they? They all look. When you look at the shape of them and their fitness levels, they don't look too different from a Premier League player or from a Championship player, do they? Whereas if you went back 20, 25 years, there was a clear difference. You see a Warren Aspinall playing at our level, and then you look up to the Premier League, chalk and cheese, really, wasn't it? He looks like a little bit of a throwback at times. He's got he's. I'm not saying he's fast. I'm certainly not saying that, but he's a big lad. He's got a bit of bulk about him. He can hold players off, to be fair, and he gets goals. But he's one of the ones a lot of Carlisle fans were calling for him to sign for us, or for us to sign for him. But I was never sold on it. Just from the few games I'd seen him play for Fylde, I never thought he was a particularly great footballer. But obviously, he's got a full season now to play in the Football League. I'm interested to see how he does for them.
Well, he hasn't been banging them in, has he, really, ever since he signed for Oldham?
3 goals in 10 appearances, not too bad, I suppose, really.
No, it's not awful. But they've also got David Wheater. as well,
Yes.
who was a former Carlisle loan target.
He was indeed back in the day. Never did sign those.
No.
But he's a good experience head to have at the back there, really, isn't he? When you think about it. So yeah, I think I'm not sure what to make of this one. Prediction wise, what do you reckon?
Honestly, it's so hard to call, and I'm kind of scared to put my head on the vice with a prediction, because it really could go either way. But I'll be quite conservative, and I'll say 2-1 Carlisle. I
was going to say 2-1 as well, and I think it's going to be goals from ex-Oldham player Luis Alessandra. I think he'll get one, and I think another goal for Toure is my predictions.
Yeah,
not sure what you think.
Yeah, I'll go along with that. Or maybe Dean Furman as the former player with the goal, because former players always seem to score against their the clubs. Harry McCurdy's nailed on to score against us for Port Vale.
Well, yeah, we'll come on to that one in a minute, actually, funny enough. That's one of the next ones I was going to discuss. There's actually a couple more ex-Oldham players, isn't there, the squad, obviously. I think Rod McDonald as well. I think he started out at Oldham as a youngster. So we potentially got a spine there of players down the middle who are ex-Oldham. So interesting, that. Okay, so we're both going for 2-1 win to Carlisle. We're both going to look really stupid on Monday, aren't we, when we discuss our disastrous 3-0 defeat, as it no doubt will be. But yeah, hopefully we can get a result and get through. It's interesting, just before I finish off this section, just spotted this morning that the EFL have announced the details for the round 2 and round 3 draws of the next round of the Carabao Cup. So obviously the games are going to be happening on consecutive Wednesdays, aren't they? Or consecutive weeks. The idea is obviously we're going to try and fit in as much as possible before the actual proper season starts. Obviously they've got to cram stuff in simply because of the season starting later. So we'll know on Sunday afternoon who we're playing in the next round if we get through. But then we'll also know who we're potentially going to play in the third round if we then get through that game. So it's a little bit different to what they normally do. It's almost like sort of the way they do tennis, isn't it, where they do the whole draw at once. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, next round is Premier League teams coming, don't they? And normally you're desperate to think, I really want Newcastle away, or I want, Everton away, something like that.
Premier League team's not in Europe, isn't it?
Yeah, Premier League team's not in Europe, sorry. Very correct there. Normally we're desperate for these games, aren't we? But I'm just not as fussed because I can't go to them.
I think we're nailed on to get Newcastle away, and then in the third round, Manchester United away. Absolutely
nailed on, but we'll get those two. In fact, it'd be incredible if we ended up getting through this round, getting to the third round and playing Manchester City at home, and they've signed Lionel Messi, and we don't get a chance to see him play at Brunton Park. That would be absolutely typical Carlisle, that would, wouldn't it? Sod's law. Oh, well, I think we've done the Carabao Cup preview now there, Mike. So let's move on to the regular section we have on ex-Carl United updates. So this is looking at players who've previously played for us, or even coaching staff on management, and what they're getting up to, any of them in the news. So let's start off with the first one. The man who we saw scored his first goal for the club, didn't we, last season? Because he signed for the club he scored against. That's Ryan Loft. He signed a 2-year deal for Scunthorpe United. Little bit of a surprise, this one, especially the length of the deal.
Yeah, I think his agent deserves credit for pulling that off. But he played very well against Scunthorpe, so maybe they're going off the back of that performance, because he came on off the bench, didn't he, when we played them away, and he completely changed the game.
Yeah, well, their managers, I think it's Neil Cox, isn't it? I think he's taken over, and I don't think he was there last season, but apparently he's been tracking Loft previously at his previous club he was at. So he clearly someone he rates, and I know a lot of fans have mocked, but I think in some of the games he showed signs that he could be a good player. Other games, not so much, maybe.
He did. He just didn't do it enough for me.
No.
That was the thing.
And he's at an age now. He's one of these players who's been sort of bandied around a couple of Premier League clubs in their under 23 sides. And you think to yourself, how are you actually developing as a footballer doing that? You have these little loan spells, but you're not a permanent player in the squad. So sometimes managers can be inclined to leave those players out, can't they? As we've seen with obviously Presley and Beach. And you think to yourself, you need to go out and join a proper club and actually play football. And it might be the making of him. He might go to Scunthorpe and start playing regular games and find his sort of role in the team, I suppose. I think I tend to agree. He's a bit quicker than you'd expect for the size of him. probably doesn't win as much in the air as he should do, but that's one of those things that sometimes you can coach into players. So, interesting one. We'll obviously get a very quick meet up again with him, won't we, at the end of this month? I think we play Scunthorpe away, so that'll be an interesting one. Next up, two players who played for us quite a while ago, so it's a little bit of older news this, but Glenn Murray has joined Watford on a season-long loan, and Adam Clayton has signed for Birmingham City. Murray just keeps on going, doesn't he? It's quite incredible. You never would have had him down as a Premier League player, I suppose, when he was with us. You could probably see him doing well, but maybe never that high.
Yeah, I mean, he's never sort of depended on pace, has he?
No.
So he's more just been the sort of...
He's a nuisance, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And I think he'll bang goals in the Championship for Watford, certainly. So
it's a really smart signing by them, actually, I would say.
Yeah, if I was a Watford fan, I'd be chuffed with that.
Yeah, I think it's a really good one. And Adam Clayton's a player who's done pretty well since he left us. Maybe just a little bit surprising that he never quite made it to the sort of Premier League, did he? I think he was at Borough, wasn't he, when they got into the Premier League, but maybe didn't feature quite as much. And yeah, it's an interesting one, him going to Birmingham.
He's had a solid sort of Championship career, because he was obviously a player that looked very good for us as well. But yeah, I think he'll be a good signing for Birmingham as well.
Yeah. Let's look at a couple of former trialists now. Junior Mondal, or Lewis Scoble, as Dan likes to call him, because that's his actual name, has signed for AFC Fylde after being released from his trial with us. And it looks like Joe Fryer is set to sign for Swindon Town in League One. Good move for him. Not a massive surprise in Mondal. Never really quite got his chance to do with the injuries in his trial, and probably National League North, a better level for him to get regular games and rebuild his career, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously it's sort of 2 leagues below where he was hoping to be playing. But yeah, at the end of the day, sort of his age, you just want to be playing football and prove yourself.
Yeah, and obviously for Joe Fryer, he's had 2 years out with that horrendous leg break injury. A chance to play at League One level Swindon Town, difficult for him to turn down. Maybe one of those ones we might look back and think, should we maybe have taken the punt and signed him?
Yeah, it really could go either way, couldn't it? Hopefully he's sort of recovered, not just physically but mentally as well. It must be sort of quite daunting, sort of going down to a striker's feet after what happened to him. I still can't believe that Crewe player never got much in the way of a ban.
He got booked and that was it. And their manager, David Artell, kicked off about it at the time, saying, to disgrace, he's broke his leg as well. So it doesn't matter if he's broke his leg as well. It's a horrendous tackle. He should have been sent off. But
exactly.
I'm grateful about red cards from 2 years ago. But yeah, so there you go. That's the 2 ex-trialists. Here's the one that you mentioned earlier, Mike. Harry McCurdy. So reports suggest he is training with Port Vale. Interesting one. We know he actually lives down in Stoke, or at least in the Stoke area, so it sort of makes sense for him to be sort of training with them. But it's interesting that he's only just turning up there now, right at the end of pre-season. Doesn't suggest there's been many takers for him. And if you're a player of his ability, of his undoubted ability, if you're not getting clubs, that suggests that maybe there's an issue with your attitude that is putting clubs off signing you, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite disappointed that we didn't keep hold of him, because he does have undoubted ability, but yeah, maybe we're not the only ones who have sort of had reservations about him.
Well, it's interesting. I've been reading some comments from the Port Vale fans, and their reaction to potentially signing him is mixed, to say the least. By all accounts, he played when he was on loan at Crewe from Aston Villa against Port Vale in a game, and you'll be really shocked to hear this, Mike, but he spent a lot of his time winding up the Port Vale fans and basically acting like a bit of a tit. So genuinely, I was shocked. And yeah, some of their fans are a bit like, do we really need a player like this with his attitude, with the squad that John Askey's building there? And he does look like he's building a decent squad at Port Vale. He'll add a bit of flair to their team, but does he upset the apple cart? That's the question with that one.
I think he's one of them though. If he's in a good team, like every team needs a bit of a knobhead who winds opposition fans up. And if he's in a good team, you'd kind of love to have him. And if he's against you, you kind of you hate him, kind of thing. But he wasn't really in the best team for us last season. If he's in a good team and things are going well, I think people will forget about his maybe antics a little bit and just focus on his ability. Obviously, with us, he couldn't consistently do what he could do enough, maybe. But at the same time, you could throw in a classic argument if he was consistently the player that we saw he could be, then he wouldn't be anywhere near Carlisle. But I quite liked him. Some of our fans didn't so much. Hopefully, he'll sort of settle down and have a career in football, just not against us.
I mean, there is an argument that he spent some of his time giving lip to the fans and complaining about them not getting behind the team and stuff. Is there an argument there that he may have had a slight point at times? Because the atmosphere can be pretty rubbish at Brunton Park sometimes, and maybe he's used to being at clubs where the atmosphere has been decent and the fans are getting behind the team, and maybe he didn't quite understand the circumstances around the club and why fans weren't particularly happy at the time. Maybe that's where the problem comes from. But I suppose it doesn't help when he just bangs on about being a Chelsea fan all the time as well, which just drove a few people mad as well.
Yeah, and there's times when he was injured for us or whatever, and he was just off down to watch Chelsea, which I know that you can stand in the stands or sit in the stands and watch football when you're injured, but it felt like he wasn't really sort of particularly committed to us, which I think got on some fans' backs a little bit. Which,
I think I thought some fans have been a little bit too precious about that, if I'm honest. I mean, sometimes you need to wind your neck in a little bit and just say whatever. But at the same time, maybe McCurdy needed to recognise that he was winding people up and just tone it down a little bit instead of then going to make it worse. But hey-ho. But yeah, I'd imagine he'll probably end up signing for Port Vale and scoring the winner against us. And
definitely
giving it the old finger to the lips. Absolutely no doubt he'll do that. Hopefully in front of an empty stadium, and he'll just have to do it to an empty stand and look an absolute prat in the process. Other sort of ex-players who've left us last season news. Jack Bridge, Southend still not decided whether they're going to sign him or not yet. I'd imagine they're probably desperate for players, so I wouldn't be amazed if he did turn up there again. Other than that, I think some of the rest just haven't found clubs yet. Byron Webster, I'm still surprised he hasn't at least had, National League clubs potentially taking him on trial. But although their season's a bit further off, isn't it? So maybe that's the reason why they're not quite sorted.
There is one that you missed out, which is Kwame Thomas signed for Wrexham.
Kwame Thomas, yes, I thought about that. Yeah, I saw that actually the other day. Yeah, it's an interesting one, that one. So yeah, that's in terms of the players who left us last season covered. Very briefly, we'll quickly touch on one of the local non-league sides in the FA Cup. Penrith edged a thrilling tie against Pickering Town 3-2. Some ex-Carlisle players were involved in that for both teams, actually, funny enough. So Max Brown scored for the Bonnie Blues. They brought Sean Law, who's an ex-Carlisle youth player, off the bench, and Jed Dalton as well. Do you remember him? That's going back quite a bit, isn't it? Was he under Paul Simpson that he was in our squad?
I think Neil MacDonald.
Neil MacDonald, you might be right there. That rings a bell. But yeah, Jed Dalton featured for Pickering as well. So congratulations to the Bonnie Blues, who are through to the next round. That FA Cup seems really cramped in. I've been looking at it, and my word, they're cramming a lot of fixtures in it before our rounds arrive. So be interesting that. I think, Mike, that pretty much wraps up this episode. So thanks again for your time. So coming up next week, Mike and I are going to be joined by Dan, aren't we, to do a League Two preview. I think originally we were looking at doing it over 4 episodes. We've had a little rethink on that, haven't we? And we're probably going to do it over 2 now. So we're going to look at it team by team, and then we're going to make our predictions so you can mock us all next May when they're completely and utterly wrong. It's interesting, actually. I saw a stat the other day about relegation odds from League Two over the last, I think, 7 seasons. A team that's been priced 10-1 or more has gone down to the conference in, I think, every one of the last 7 seasons. So it's interesting. Like, Notts County were 50-1 when they got relegated. So it does show, you can have some unexpected results in there.
Yeah,
so you never know. You never know. So yeah, we'll be doing that. If you've got any thoughts on the season ahead, just let us know on the usual places, on Twitter, obviously, and email. I promise you, we will be doing the second part of the 05-06 season special soon. Mike, we need to find some time together when we're going to sit down and do that one. And also me and Dan are going to do one about kits as well. That might be a little bit further off, but we will be doing that in the future. So if you've got any comments or feedback, or there's anything you'd like to suggest we discuss, please send them in via Twitter to @BruntonBugle or by email to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast via all good podcast apps, including Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Please do give us a review. We really appreciate the excellent feedback we've had so far. In fact, should we go and have a look, Mike, and see if we've got any new countries to tick off on our listening thing? I love doing this bit because you get some weird places. I've been talking to someone who apparently, I know that someone lives in Luxembourg and has been around parts of Europe with work or travelling and have been listening in different countries. So we've been able to tick a few more countries off thanks to that, basically. Let's have
hopefully some more South African listeners.
Oh, I'd hope so soon. South Africa is not on the list yet. That's disappointing. Come on, lads.
Yeah.
You're letting the team down here. Chile is obviously on the list. We mentioned that one previously. The usual places: Netherlands, Norway, Canada, New Zealand, Denmark, Ireland, Australia, USA. Let's have a look. Yeah, Germany obviously is in there as well. We've mentioned that before. Where have you got people listening in the United Kingdom? That's the question there. Let's have a look. Let's go and see some of the weird towns that are going to come up here. Carlisle's the most popular place. That's a shock. London, Dumfries, Liverpool, quite a few. Luton, Whitehaven, Workington, Cleaton Moor. All the places. We've got Ashton-under-Hill, Ashton-under-Lyme, Ballymena, Bangor, Barden Hill. All the places. Brighton, Barden, Leigh-on-Sea. Basically everywhere. Everybody's listening to us. It's brilliant. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. We really do appreciate it. Hopefully we'll try and maybe get an episode out on Monday, a little brief one, just discussing the weekend win over Oldham, as I'm sure it will be. But other than that, we'll obviously be doing the season previews next week and then a preview of the Cambridge game. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Up the Blues and go well, everyone.
I don't mind living life on the edge. I just don't want to die on the edge. Hand on heart, if you said to me, would you change it? No, I'd have done it again. Yeah, I would have done it again.